Hello Manchester, and welcome to another edition of Girard at Large. I am your about to get in trouble host, Rich Girard. Thanks for tuning in. As you know, you can find us online at girardatlarge.com, and you can find us on Facebook and Twitter, also known as X. Also at Girard at Large, where we encourage you to like us and to follow us. Why? Well, when we get into trouble, we want to bring as many of you with us as we can. As you can see, I have some pickles here. They're pickled peppers. I haven't pickled in a while, but we'll get to the motivation for that. And I want you to know that on my way into the studio, I handed one of my homemade pickled pepper jars, they're zesty, to Chris Herbert, who anchors the show right before me. And so I just want you to know I have violated the Manchester City ordinance on handing out pickles. But don't worry, as you're about to find out in just a couple minutes, Manchester has been selectively enforcing this ordinance, and it's the untold story of what's really happening here in the Queen City with pickles and oh, so much more. But first, we have a guest tonight. There's a special event coming up, a Liberty Walk. Do I have that right?
Freedom Walk.
Freedom Walk. And Deb Roux, who is the organizer, is here to talk about it and the organization that she has formed to help fund a statue to the founders of our country. So we invited Deb on to share a little bit about what's going on so that you, I know this audience is liberty-minded always, could take part if you so chose. But before we get to that, so it's pickles, there's something weird going on with a $300 million sewer project. We've already talked about the health department, and the school board has gone rogue yet again. We'll have all those details and more. But in the meantime, Deb, welcome to Girard at Large.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
So, Deb, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself to our audience, and we'll start with what your organization is and what's coming up.
Okay. My name is Deb Roux, and I live in Manchester in Ward 12. And I came across the Forefathers Monument about in 2021, and it really impressed me, and I've been taking tours down there, taking people for tours down there.
And where is the Founders Monument?
The monument is in Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Oh!
It's not that far from Plymouth Rock, but not many people know about it. And I'm not really sure why, but here is a beautiful picture of it.
Can you zoom in on that, Debbie?
It's made up of 5 statues: faith, morality, law, education, and liberty. And it's the secret sauce recipe, if you will, for being a self-governing citizen. So when I took my first tour there, I realized that not many people know about it. So I decided to start bringing people there to get the tours. There's a place called the Jenny in Plymouth that Nancy and Leo Martin, they give tours of the monument in the town of Plymouth. So we bring a group down there, and it is so much fun. So I really, God put it on my heart to do a Freedom Walk last year, and we actually raised money for the Jenny. But this year, I started asking people if they thought it would be a good idea to start bringing these books into our schools and churches and libraries and city and town halls, like the city clerk and stuff. And we're bringing the books and also this poster, this 18 by 24 inch poster to our schools and communities. And so people had told me that I should probably form like an LLC so I can, collect donations and I can show where the money's going to. It's not going to me. Mm-hmm. So I came up with the Matrix Coalition of New Hampshire. Some friends of mine, we got together to come up with a name and stuff. And so the Freedom Walk this year, which is on September 13th at the state capitol, we're going to be setting up around 8, but people are welcome to come between 9 and 10 to register for the walk. And this year we're going around the state capitol and the legislative building, so we're going to do like 5 laps around. And then we have raffle items. I just found out that Turning Point is going to be there with their high school.
Turning Point USA?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
they
good.
have a high school coalition that this woman Grace is heading up, so she just bought a sponsorship there, so she's going to join us. And we also have Michelle Gallagher, the author of this beautiful book. She's going to be there explaining about the monument after the walk. So we'll have sign-ups between 9 and 10. The walk will start around 10 and go till about 11. So if people can't do all 5 laps, they can kind of, step off. But we're asking people to bring chairs and like a bagged lunch for when Michelle does her speech around 11. It'll probably be about a half an hour. And we're just going to have some nice fellowship and community and share the wonderful attributes of this monument.
Well, it sounds great. You know, when I was on the school board and also when I had my radio show, Mike Lopez and some other folks from the Greater Manchester Veterans Council had a book like this all about the American flag.
Oh,
and
nice. Yeah.
they we actually worked with them to come before the school board to get the school board's permission to put, you know, that book into each library. So I wonder whether or not I should introduce you and Mike, because I have a feeling that the veterans in the city would probably be interested in you know, taking a look at this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is so important, especially for the younger generation, to find out the truth
about the founding of America.
Yeah,
it's not the 1619 Project.
Right,
I mean, America wasn't founded for the purpose of perpetuating slavery.
Exactly. And I'm just learning about like the differences between liberty and freedom. And freedom, or liberty, is freedom plus morality. Like when you have a moral people, you don't need a lot of laws because it's the golden rule. Like you do unto others as you want them to do to you.
Well, so. I forget if it was John Adams or John Madison or James Madison who said that the U.S. Constitution is suited to a moral and educated people and wholly unsuited to anything but.
Right, exactly.
So, and I think one of the key problems that we have in society today, to be perfectly honest with you, is that the woke left has been so successful for really a couple of generations now in separating the values of the founding from the society that so many, to me they're still kids, but you know, pretty much almost anybody under the age of 40 now doesn't, generally speaking, have a grasp on what the founding principles were, why they were, where they came from, what it cost every single one of the founders in terms of, you know, blood and treasure.
Right, exactly.
And
life, fortune, and sacred.
American history has, you know, there are entire college curriculums now where you could be a so-called history major without taking one course in American history. And so I think, you know, this kind of effort is really vital to helping people understand what tools, especially people who've taken their kids out of school. You know, they're not sending them to the government-run schools anymore.
Right.
And they're looking for resources, they're looking for places, they're looking for opportunities, things to show their kids and help them learn what America's really all about.
Right. So I highly encourage anybody that wants to learn more to come on our next tour, which is October 18th, and you can find more information on how to join us at the Matrix Coalition of New Hampshire.com.
And I believe we have that up on the screen, Matrix Coalition of New Hampshire.com. So, you know, honestly, when I see the word Matrix, I obviously think of the movie.
Right,
and
I
honestly,
know.
And I'm not a huge fan of the movie, to be honest with you.
I know. I don't even think I've seen it.
But why the Matrix Coalition? What is there like a meaning or a purpose to the name? Where does the name come from?
Well, it comes from, the Forefathers Monument is known as the Matrix of Liberty.
Oh,
so like it's it's what the founders valued, faith, knowing that our rights come from God and that our liberty is given to us at birth by God, and that morality, when you have a moral people that are aligned with God, they understand, you know, the difference between right and wrong and that there's absolute truth. And so then when you have that inward change, you're going to have laws that are, you know, have mercy and justice. Like the punishment meets the crime, so to speak, and it applies to everybody, not someone with more money versus less money. They're equally applied. And then the huge thing, which I've noticed in New Hampshire has been taken away from us, is the parental rights of education. So educating your kids in the next generation is not just the parents' responsibility, it's the grandparents' responsibility, like the community.
It's the family's responsibility.
And you need to have parents that know that, because if you don't know your rights, you don't have them.
Well, it would help if we had a governor that actually signed legislation that enabled that.
I know.
You know, she did campaign on it, so when she takes on the left's rhetoric and complains about book bans that actually don't exist in a law that only gave parents the a glide path. If there was a book in a kid's school that they thought was inappropriate, all that law did was spell out the process by which the parents could challenge the book. That's all it did. And this is what the Democrats called a book ban. And Kelly Ayotte, when she vetoed it, said, yep, it's a book ban, and we don't do that in New Hampshire. She totally threw parents under the bus despite campaigning for parental rights. So
Right. Well, that's what I'm finding out is we have these rights under the Constitution, but our government or legislator or teachers are taking those rights away from parents. So now we as people have to write laws to try to get those rights back that we already had to begin with. And it's crazy.
So education, and then the last one?
Education that gives you liberty.
Oh, that gives you liberty.
And this liberty man is like staunch, and he's got the chains of tyranny broken. He has the lion's head slain, like hanging over his neck here. And then he has a sword, but it's in the defensive mode. It's in the sheath. And he's looking out over the Atlantic Ocean. This monument is up on a big hill in a residential area. It's 81 feet tall, and it overlooks the Atlantic Ocean. It's the largest standing granite monument in the country, and it's not widely known.
I had no idea it existed.
Yeah, that's why I feel God's calling me to share it with people and have everybody dive deeper on their, in their own time. Come on the tours with us. Come to the Freedom Walk on September 13th. A week from Saturday at the state capitol, and learn more about it and meet the author and get one of these books. She's going to have plenty, and she'll sign it for you and stuff, and just get together with other liberty-minded people that know the importance of self-government. We can do it. We know what's good for,
Well, we have a history of doing it, but, that's the thing. What is it? It said eternal vigilance is the price of liberty?
Mm-hmm. Yes, if you're not on top of it, you're going to lose it.
Exactly. All right, Deb Roux, we appreciate your joining us here on the Girard at Large television show. And one more time, the website is matrixcoalitionofnh.com. That's matrixcoalitionofnh.com. Learn more about the walk, learn more about the tours, learn more about the monument and how you can use it to learn for yourself and help your family learn about the founding of our country.
Thank you.
Deb, thanks for joining us.
I appreciate it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break so Deb can make a graceful exit. We'll be back with all of the mush that is the Manchester political scene. Stay tuned. We are back, and we want to thank Deb Roux again for joining us. MatrixCoalitionofNH.com. I honestly did not know there was a monument to the founders. Never mind that it was the biggest granite monument on in the country. So you can, hey, you know what? Let's plan a road trip. All right. Well, the issue that is roiling the city of Manchester today, pickles. And, well, I'm a bit of a gardener, and I got a bumper crop of green peppers this year, among others. But I was a little unhappy with how everything came out because those green peppers, which I really don't like, were supposed to be red, orange, yellow. I got a bunch of purple ones, which are really cool. And then I had some banana peppers and some Hungarian wax peppers and some jalapeno peppers that were supposed, and some red chilies. And, well, the place where the garden is located, which was, at the house I grew up in, turns out that there's a really great big oak tree next door that wasn't there when I was a kid growing up there. And so it cast a pretty big shadow over the garden until about 12 noon or 4:30. And as the sun swung around, there were woods in the back of the house. And so by about 4:30, the garden is once again immersed in shade. So a lot of the produce that I got out of the garden this year didn't turn the color it was supposed to because it simply didn't get enough sun. So I was inspired by Picklegate here in the Queen City and decided today I would dig up my mom's old pickling equipment and I pickled a bunch of peppers. And as mentioned, if anybody would like some pickles, and you know where I live, you're welcome to come by the house and I'll happily hand you these. Now, mind you, I've not ever used this recipe before, but if you like them zesty, these are zesty. And there are sweet peppers, there are regular peppers, and there are some peppers that will, they got, what is it? What do they call those heat units? 10, anyway, one of them's got 8,000, the other's got 10. So there's some heat in some of them there, pickles. But I think what happened at the Board of Mayor and Aldermen on Tuesday night is really sort of illustrative of just how sick Manchester government has become. And so on one hand, you have the health department proclaiming that all it did was its job and its duty, and that because it is a self-policing health department, we can't follow the exemptions that exist in the state law for every other community in the state of New Hampshire, save for the 15 that are self-enforcing health departments who have the leeway under the law to be more strict than the state law, but that doesn't mean they necessarily are. But one of the things that we learned as the health department was just saying it was just doing its job. It's just enforcing the ordinance. It's not political in any way. One of the things we learned is that they are actually, by a policy the health department adopted all on its own, not actually enforcing part of the ordinance, which covers a much broader scope of activity here in the Queen City. And that would have to deal with bake sales and, whether it's for school or a church function or anything else like that. If they were following the ordinance, which was written in 1969, and for some reason people are like, of course we have this problem. The ordinance hasn't been updated in almost 60 years. No, the problem here is that, first and foremost, and Alderman Levasseur made this point, I think rather pointedly, despite Jay Rouet's multiple efforts to shut him down, shut him up, and otherwise defend the health department. But he made the key point before this letter got sent out. What did I do with the letter? This is the letter that got sent out. The cease and desist order to Daniel Mowry of Holt Ave in Ward 6. He asked them point blank whether or not they investigated the allegations that he was selling pickles as a commercial operation before they issued the cease and desist letter. And Anna Thomas, the director of public health, said, we don't comment on any individual investigation. Well, wait a minute, Levasseur says. You're before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen specifically on this issue. And you're not going to tell us whether or not you conducted an investigation before issuing the letter? Because as the story comes out, as Dan Mowry himself tells the story, and not, as it's presented in the Union Leader or the New Hampshire Journal, he was never actually charging for the pickles. Apparently, he posted something up on Facebook, saying, hey, look, I made some pickles, and people were offering to buy them from him, and he said, look at me, I've got paying customers. This was considered advertising and solicitation of the general public to buy pickles, which apparently is against the law in the city of Manchester, though allowable by the state of New Hampshire. And so the point is, Mr. Mowry testified before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen during public participation. He said after he got the letter, he called the health department to talk to him about it, and nobody ever returned his call. He filed a right-to-know request to ask who filed the complaint against him. That was 3 weeks ago, and nobody has actually come forward to say who the complaint was filed by. And so as Levasseur was trying to get to the heart of the matter by saying, did you investigate this before you issued the cease and desist letter? Anna Thomas says, we don't talk about individual investigations. And Jay Rouet steps in and says, we don't ever comment on any investigation. Just like the investigation into the wheel of power and privilege at the school board that he dodged any comment on because it was under investigation. That was months ago now, folks. And you know what? We've got no idea what that investigation turned up, which tells you one of two things. Either they didn't do an investigation or they didn't do anything about what happened after they investigated because, well, we can't talk about personnel matters. No, you can't talk about personnel matters, but you can say that you identified the source of the miscommunication that led this material to come into the classroom and that you've taken the following steps to ensure it never happens again. So when they don't want to tell you what's going on, they say, oh, it's the subject of an investigation. And the investigation then goes on into the sunset, never to be heard from again. So it seems to me that if the health department had actually conducted investigation, i.e., I don't know, made a phone call, sent him a message through Facebook, showed up at his house, Mr. Mowry, we'd like to talk to you about this pickle thing, that maybe this whole mess would have been avoided, but they didn't do that. And you know they didn't do that because had they done that, we probably wouldn't be here talking about pickles. So I just want you to know that I violated the pickle ordinance by giving one of these homemade pepper pickle jars to Chris Herbert as he was leaving his television show before I came on to mine. And I offered them to be, apparently he's not a pepper fan, so he declined. Oh, and I meant to give one to Deb as she was on her way out, but Deb, I guess I'll have to get you some pickles because she was happy to take some, and I probably should have given her some. So I'm going to violate the city ordinance because it's ridiculous. When I think of how many jars of pickles and canned tomatoes and jellies and jams of all kinds that my mom made year after year and gave away to neighbors and friends that my dad brought to school to give to the teachers that he worked with. They say it's not a big deal if you're just giving it to your neighbors and friends. We don't care about that. We care when you're offering it to the general public. Memo, somebody posting something up on their Facebook page, which is made up, which is seen by their friends and family, not really making it a general public offering to strangers. I guess if they had conducted an investigation, they would have found that out too. But there are some other things that are very, very troubling about this, not the least of which is, and credit to Ross Terrio for persisting and asking whether or not there was an exemption for bake sales in, at schools and church fairs and things like that, because they kept dodging the answer. It got to a point where he just said, just give me a yes or no. Is there an exemption in the current ordinance for bake sales? And they finally were forced to say no, but before they said no, they literally took, 7-10 minutes explaining their policy of not interfering with bake sales. And for some reason, I think I might have had something to do with that because there were, health department was getting involved with bake sales at schools. And if I remember correctly, I think someone went after the bake sale at Highland Goffs Falls School when Victoria Sullivan was the PTA president, and it became this great big hullabaloo. It just went, it's one of those things that, you start to remember and you want to forget because it was just so stupid it made what was left of my hair hurt. But so they came up with a policy somewhere along the line where by policy they declined, refused, or otherwise did not enforce a major part of the ordinance. So if you're telling me that all you're doing is following the law by issuing a nasty cease and desist letter, after not actually determining one way or the other whether or not this was being offered in any sort of commercial way to the general public, and by the way, the state law makes no distinction to whether or not you're giving it away or you're selling it. You just can't do as a homesteader more than $20,000 worth of sales, and a guy who made 3 dozen jars of pickles isn't gonna make 20 grand. you have to ask whether or not the health department is, in fact, a credible organization, right? And of course, Anna Thomas goes on to defend what they're doing by talking about somebody who brought meals to a local daycare and sent 20 kids to the hospital. Well, if they had sent pickles that got the kids sick, then maybe I'd understand that. And she talked about some clown who made pulled pork sandwiches at their home and sold them somewhere in Bedford and sent people to the hospital. Well, okay, I guess, but you realize that the ordinance only gets enforced after people get sick. It's not preventing anybody apparently from doing anything. But the upshot is none of it really had to do with with pickles. Which isn't exactly, if you've ever created a brine to make pickles, if you've ever gone through the canning process, the only thing you're going to get out of pickles, it could get botulism. Okay. But, and it's funny. And I started thinking about the health department. This is the same Anna Thomas who is the director of the health department. This is the same Anna Thomas who in July, I believe it was, of 2020, told the Alderman Mike Porter from Ward 8 specifically, and by the way, kudos to Alderman Ed Sapienza, who made a point of catching them in the crosshairs of their own testimony over not enforcing part of the ordinance, but claiming all they do is enforce the ordinance. So remember, the alderman at the time, because there was a massive heat wave coming that had started and was in the midst of the city, and the Board of Aldermen was contemplating opening up the city's pools and splash pads so that people could cool off in the heat. And Anna Thomas, in public session, told the aldermen if they did that, the blood of senior citizens in nursing homes was going to be on their hands. That's what Anna Thomas said. And Chrissy Cantor rightly nailed Anna Thomas to the wall, talking about, you're an expert, eh? Well, you kept Manchester and Manchester schools locked down longer than any other place in the state of New Hampshire. You kept recommending masks long after everybody else did. The way you handled COVID was not exactly, kosher, if I can, okay? And so, maybe we really should start to question your judgment and whether or not this is about public food safety and not about just controlling people and what they do. She also brought up the fact that she was at an event at a business that was licensed or okay to, give out food, but apparently because they gave out the food on the outside of the establishment and not the inside of the establishment, the health department gave them a hard time, and the only reason why the health department knew it was going on was because, Chrissy Cantor announced that she was going to be there on her Facebook page, and so she started to question whether or not they were just trolling Facebook to find people for political reasons to go and do, ridiculous enforcement actions. So, but this is also the same health department that in 2019 failed to warn the public about a norovirus outbreak at the Puritan back room that actually killed somebody who ate at the back room. It wasn't known for several weeks until after the outbreak, and it was only because there was somehow Channel 9 got a hold of the story, but they didn't name the restaurant, and then people started to dig around, and come to find out, it was the Puritan back room. A norovirus outbreak. And after the Manchester Health Department was questioned about why they didn't notify the public of the potential norovirus hazard at the Puritan back room, they said, we were able to determine that there was no danger to the public. Oh, well, someone tell me what the danger to the public about my pickles is, or Mr. Mowry's pickles are. So remember that? So here's the health department jumping up and down about some guy who put out a Facebook post to his family and friends, because, that's who he's connected to on Facebook, about making pickles. and saying, hey, look, I've got paying customers after people offered to buy some. Shut him down, but let the Puritan back room where a norovirus outbreak killed somebody go on without so much as warning to the public. This would be the same health department that tried to get the zoning changed on 2nd Street to ban fast food restaurants so that people wouldn't get fat. I wonder, right now as we speak, Jess Spillers and a bunch of Democrat candidates for municipal office are holding a block party of sorts at the Prout Park Playground. Come meet Jess and Ward 7 and 8 municipal candidates. Bring your kids, bring some food, and let's build community. Did Jess Spillers go to the health department for a permit so that people could bring food from their homes to share with their friends at a political outing? I wonder. I'm pretty sure the person who sent this to me sent it to the health department. Are they going to show up at Prouts Park and issue a cease and desist order to prevent people from bringing food from their home to share with their other political compatriots at a Jess Spillers? Well, maybe they're not worried about it because who's going to go see Jess Spillers? Point is you're either enforcing the ordinance or you don't. And where does the health department coming up with a policy that says we're going to ignore entirely the part of the ordinance that applies to bake sales, and we're just going to enforce the part that deals with pickles? Meanwhile, Troy McLawn, who is the challenger to Alderman Jim Burkish in Ward 9, submitted a right-to-know request after Tuesday night's meeting to the Manchester Health Department regarding their stated policy of not enforcing parts of Chapter 17.5 of the City Code when it comes to homestead food operations like bake sales. The statement was made by department leaders at the September 2 board of Mayor and Alderman meeting after board members had continually questioned them to answer directly. To be clear, this is not about one person selling pickles or even cookies at a church fair. My concern is much larger. A city department has openly said it is following an internal policy that directs them to ignore an existing city ordinance. Hey, there's precedent for that. Dan Goonan, when he was fire chief, refused to enforce the life safety code that the fire department typically uses to crush property owners and business owners that don't do exactly what they say, so that all of these illegally operating sober homes, which he numbered publicly in the newspaper at over 60 at the time, he believed that they should be allowed to operate and provide the kind of safe and affordable housing that addicts need to recover. So this isn't the first time a city department has decided on its own to ignore enforcing the laws that it is entrusted to enforce. And that's why the Board of Mayor and Aldermen needs to step in and tell people to do their jobs. Now, listen, I wouldn't be happy about, shutting down bake sales that support, church organizations and schools or nonprofits or Cub Scout, whatever. But sometimes the best way to get an ordinance changed is to enforce it, not ignore it. What kind of rule of law do you have if you have departments that just adopt an internal policy saying, yeah, no, we're not going to enforce that part of the ordinance? And McLawn goes on to say, if we start picking and choosing which laws or ordinances to enforce, it undermines trust in city government. We must either apply laws equally to everyone, update them, or eliminate them altogether. What we cannot do is have departments take it upon themselves to look the other way. I will provide an update once the health department responds, and will share any such policies or directives that come to light. Now, why, and I think Chrissy Cantor asked about that when she was there, but when she was doing her thing. But folks, this is just not really great. And so, and I can't stress enough that and I've personally had dealings with the Aaron, I believe it's pronounced Kritsky, at the health department. And in my personal dealings with him, I have been very satisfied. I've only ever talked to the guy once or twice before, but he's the guy who sent out the letter, and it's very clear. What they should have done is said, you know what, we actually didn't verify what we saw on social media before we sent out the letter. If they had done that, the whole situation probably gets diffused. The board says, sit down and talk to them and find out what went on, and then we can have a conversation about the ordinance. But when you've got Jay Roux interfering with the questioning by members of the board, specifically Levasseur, trying to get to the nub of what was and what wasn't done, and refusing to talk publicly because, well, it's under investigation. It's not under investigation. What investigation is being conducted? The guy who supposedly is being investigated has said his calls and emails to the health department have not been responded to. What are they investigating? They're just patting themselves on the back right now for, hey, we shut down this threat to public safety. How come you didn't shut down the Puritan back room? How come you haven't apologized for scolding the aldermen and telling them that the blood of senior citizens in nursing homes was going to be on their hands because they voted to let children go to splash pads during a July heat wave? What's the connection between kids going to a splash pad or a swimming pool operated by the city and senior citizens in nursing homes? This is a department that has selectively used its power to pursue or protect other people. And I think it should be looked into a little more deeply. Speaking of Troy McLawn, I will post this segment that I did on my radio show after the city got slapped down for its panhandling ordinance. And it was a weird slapdown because on one hand, the city, the judge that struck down the panhandling ordinance said that it was unfair because it was only penalizing the panhandlers for receiving something from a motorist, and it didn't have any penalty against the motorist. And on the other hand, they said it was geographically too broad because it applied only to the whole city. It didn't just apply to the to the areas where there was a problem. Oh, by the way, hey B, that reminds me, I sent you some pictures. So let's talk about the pictures. Let's bring up the pictures because this has to do with panhandling and homelessness. So there's a panhandler on the corner of South Beach and South Willow Street, right outside of Kerner's Quick Lube. He was a very friendly fellow. He was actively waving to people over and over again. All right, next picture. This fellow, this is at the corner of South Willow and Seams Drive. This guy shot out, and what is it, the Golden Corral that's right there, the Wendy's maybe? He shot out like he was not in his right mind. I almost picked him off. I had to stop dead in my tracks, and as he was going across the road with his shopping cart and all of his worldly possessions, he's probably coming from the Nuts Pond area because there's been a real problem with homeless around Nuts Pond in the past. And he just walked straight across the road, no concern for traffic, whatnot at all. No, keep the picture up, please. Kept on going. I lost sight of him, shortly thereafter. Next picture. Oh, well, there's a panhandler outside of the Courier Museum of Art. I thought that was really weird to see a turkey there. Next. And you know how I've been talking about traffic? Well, this is an example from my neighborhood of how people are parking because there isn't enough off-street parking. You actually have to walk around, you can't walk off the sidewalk where the handicap ramp is. Maybe he's been taught how to park by Jim O'Connell. That car has now been there for 3 consecutive days, blocking the line of sight and from multiple directions. And speaking of traffic, by the way, on the way here, on On Bridge Street, I stopped at the corner of Beach when the light turned, but the two cars in front of me, bright red light, just kept going. And then I got to Bridge and Chestnut to take a left-hand turn. I actually I got stuck in the intersection on that left-hand turn. Why? Because cars kept going after the light turned red. And well, today I was on Union Street, stopped at the corner of Union and Bridge, headed north. What did I see? Yep, light turns red. My light was green. Good thing I looked, because here comes a black Lexus. And when I left church this morning, I was on Amory Street, and cars were backed up from the light coming up the hill onto Amory Street, and there were 2 or 3 cars in line at Notre Dame, on Notre Dame headed south, and I was stuck there. And what do I see? I see an old guy in a red Mustang literally drive on the wrong side of Notre Dame. I hit the horn because he didn't see the car coming as he was turning. He turns up next to me onto Amory Street, stops, rolls down the window and says, "Is there a problem?" I looked at him, I said, "Stop sign?" And he told me to F off. And then he drove away in his bright red Mustang. This is what it's like to drive every day in the city of Manchester, folks. It happens every time I go out there, but I digress. So, Troy McLawn proposed an ordinance during public participation on Tuesday night at the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. I read the ordinance. Clearly, he's read the court decision. Pat Long, the outgoing alderman from Ward 3, is like, yeah, what are we doing about this? This is exactly what we tried to do before. No, it's not. This ordinance actually is responsive to what the court said was wrong about Manchester's ordinance. But in the discussion about this, Chrissy Cantor brought it in under new business. She's like, yeah, I'd like to send this to committee so that we can take a look at it. And, Long tried to stop it from going to committee, which I don't understand. All of a sudden the city solicitor chimes in and says, well, there's a permanent injunction on the city. We can't, or it was it Rice or was it Long or someone saying, yeah, people have talked about putting, sharp rocks and what, yeah, me. The permanent injunction, we can't do anything against panhandling. No, that's not what the court said. That's not what the court said. So I did a monologue after that came out when I had the radio show. I found the clip and I will post it. But Troy McLawn has that guy's been doing his homework. I'm impressed. I think Burkish is worried because I was driving through parts of Ward 9 today, and well, guess what? Burkish has got signs up. That's kind of unusual for him. So. And another update. I got to give you the all-day coffee update. So it came up under new business at the board meeting. Christine Fajardo, the alderman from Ward 4, is like, so what's this? I heard that the engagement center at Beach Street is going to be closed on Monday and Tuesdays. What's going on with that? And Jay Roux, now after I got that information that I shared with you however long ago it was, I spoke with, a handful of aldermen, and nobody had any clue why that thing was being closed on Mondays and Tuesdays. So as Roux is explaining it, he's like, well, the PowerPoint presentation I gave you in non-public session had an asterisk saying that with the funding levels that I was proposing, there was going to have to be a reduction in hours. And she said, oh, I guess I missed that, as did just about every other member of the board, talking about his, and by the way, why was that being done in non-public session? What was it about his plan for the Beach Street Center that needed to be done in non-public session? That should have been done in public session. How much money he was coming up with, what the plan to operate it was. Yeah. So now we learned, because Christine Fajardo asked a question, we learned that Jay Roux put an item on the CIP committee agenda, which of course passed, saying that, essentially he took $192,000 from other programs funded by, one funded by ARPA and the other for winter warming money, total $191,525.23, and shifted it over to the all-day coffee place, or I want to make it sound a little classier, the place of all-day coffee. And he has restored funding, so don't you worry, all you folks looking for all-day coffee. The all-day coffee place will stay open at 39 Beach Street 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, until it goes away sometime in February or March. Now, the new location of the place of all-day coffee is going to be 200 Elm Street. So it's about a block south of the Market Basket, which is now across the street from all those apartments that Red Oak built, in an area that's generally starting to pick up in its development. So now the city is going to spend $7,000 a month, plus take $125,000 for fit up of the space. And of course, it's going to be responsible for all maintenance, all repairs, all utilities, all insurances, all that fun stuff. So it starts at $7,000 a month. By the time it's all done, it'll probably be 10. And it's going to be a shelter for 20 people who are medically frail, which once again begs the question about why the city of Manchester is spending your property tax dollars, or tax dollars that come from the state or federal government. You know, if it comes from a government, it comes from taxes that are paid, or in the case of the federal government, money that's just printed out of thin air with no basis in reality. And it's not coming from taxes, it's coming from debt. That's fun. And he's trying to say now that, oh yeah, there are rules to the shelter. Funny. I don't have really time to go through all of the stuff that he has put out there, but hey, somebody who gets caught shooting up at the shelter on Beach Street, yeah, they just can't be there for a day. 1-day restrictions, 2-day restrictions. Looks like the biggest penalty is a 3-day restriction, other than 3 people who resulted in a 1-year trespass from property. I don't know what that means, but yeah, they're trying desperately to justify your tax dollars going to all of these things, and I'm just not buying it. But folks, it's just 603-698-3233. Let me know if you'd like some pickled peppers. You gotta like them zesty. My pan wasn't big enough to add all of the water that I needed to add to the vinegar and the sugar and the salt and the various spices, lots of garlic. So if you like garlic, these are vampire slaying peppers, and I'm happy to share. So one of the things that was brought up under new business was by Chrissy Cantor, and it had to do with the school board awarding a contract, an electrical contract, for the work that needs to be done at Hillside to an out-of-state contractor that cost $100,000 more than a local company. I believe she said it was Longchamps Electric, to do the work. And that really caught my attention, because once a construction project like that has been approved, by state law, and here it is, it's RSA 198:20-D. By state law, something called a joint school building committee has got to be appointed. And it pertains to cities like Manchester. And there is, in fact, a joint school board, school building committee. The school board appoints 3 members, the Board of Aldermen appoints 3 members, and the 6 members among them determine who is going to be the chair. And it's a committee that once upon a time I chaired, because it was created to oversee the renovation of the 3rd floor at West High School to become the district offices. So I'm pretty familiar with this committee. So when I heard that the school board had awarded a contract, and Chrissy Cantor, who's a member of the Joint School Building Committee, was asking what can be done about it because it froze out a local vendor that was $100,000 less expensive. I thought, that doesn't sound right. So I sent her this ordinance, and I'm going to share it with you, and I said, the ordinance says, oh, darn it, it's the wrong one. It's not 198-20-D. I'm sorry, I grabbed the wrong one. But I can tell you that the ordinance delegates to the school building committee, the Joint School Building Committee, the authority to oversee the construction, and that includes the awarding of contracts. So it appears that the school board itself, by mechanisms I can only imagine, probably the Facilities and Finance Committee, which O'Connell is also on, and it's chaired by Bob Baines, who should know better because he was a mayor and a school board member back in the day, how these things work, and that Joint School Building Committee would have been operating during Bob Baines' mayoralty because Bob Baines pushed through that $100 million boondoggle that expanded Central Weston Memorial, only to see their official capacity numbers crater. Cost us over $100 million in bonding, which has been paid, let me see, so we'll call it $8 million to keep the numbers round over 25 years. What's 25 times 8? Well, it's a hell of a lot more than $100 million in overall debt service for that project, which completely handcuffed the school district and the city and its ability to maintain buildings thereafter because it was such a big debt burden to do that. Don't worry though, we dwarfed it with the 306, with the 306, actually the 330 million that we've spent. But the Joint School Committee, the Joint School Building Committee is the one that's supposed to oversee those contracts. They should not, and I brought this up at the time, they should not have purchased or paid to install those ultra-modern modular classrooms to facilitate this because that is something, they did that illegally. That should have gone through the Joint School Building Committee. Now, apparently, they're sending contracts out without the approval of the Joint School Building Committee. So the aldermen there need to put their foot down and insist that the school board follow the proper process, which is spelled out by state law. The other item I want to bring to your attention tonight is there was testimony by, I forget what union it was, and to be honest with you, normally I'm not quick to jump to the claims or the cries of unions. I've seen them over the years here try to push things called labor demonstration projects or otherwise, adopt what are called responsible employer ordinances, which give them an unfair advantage when it comes to competing for city projects. But what they had to say about the Cemetery Brook sewer project kind of caught my attention. And if they're telling the truth, and I actually kind of suspect they are, the general contractor put out bids for what are called subcontractors, actual people who are going to do the work. And apparently, I don't know if it was the union itself or a company that employs union workers, apparently they won the bid, and the bid was for X number of dollars. Well, according to the union that came to speak before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, after there were verbal agreements on the pricing, the general contractor called, and I believe the general contractor is an out-of-state company. I'm drawing a blank on the name. But the general contractor called and told them, yeah, no, here, the price is this, take it or leave it. And it was 40% less than what was agreed to. It's not cutting the overall cost of the project to the ratepayers of the city, who are going to see their sewer rates double over the next 5 years after nearly doubling over the past 5 years to pay for all of this. And then they're probably going to double again over the subsequent 5 years. So you're going to get crushed by these sewer user fees to pay for this $360 million federally mandated project. But it will seemingly accrue to the bottom line of the, whatchamacallit, of the general contractor. So I, at this point, think that the city, and frankly, you know, the Public Works Department honestly does not have a great track record on these big projects. The way they, for example, oversaw Baines's $100 million boondoggle on the schools, they did a crappy job. The way the city oversaw the construction of the field at Fisher Cat Stadium, the city did a crappy job, which is why we keep having to replace the damn field out there. It just never has been done right. And I don't know if it's a lack of knowledge, a lack of supervision, things are moving too fast or whatnot. But before we get into a situation where we're going to hire contractors that may or may not be looking to improve their bottom line by cutting corners and sticking it to the subcontractors, which might risk the quality of work and might risk the safety of the workers, I think the city ought to put the brakes on this thing and get to the bottom of what's going on so that whoever, whatever's happening can be independently verified and confirmed before they go forward. I was very concerned to see what those workers were saying. There were other people who came forward. And one more thing about public health as I wrap it up here. I completely forgot, because I left my notes at home, to talk about the desperate situation that the Valley Street Cemetery is in now, with volunteers that have been working for years to clean it up, complaining about how it's become a homeless encampment free-for-all, where there are needles and apparently just prodigious piles of poop all over the place, people having sex in the park, violence, vandalism in the cemetery, et cetera, et cetera. Someone got the bright idea, apparently, of not only opening the gates, but bolting them open. And the police, of course, have not been there. They've not been enforcing anything. And I have a sneaking suspicion that all of those people who used to hang out in Victory and Veterans Park, I have a feeling that one of the reasons why Valley Street Cemetery is now wide open and unpoliced is so they have a place to go and be out of sight and out of mind. It's backfired, and maybe the health department ought to take a harder line on cleaning up the piles of poop that are everywhere, all of the needles and everything else that's happening in the Valley Street Cemetery. And maybe the cops need to start patrolling. And here's a thought. Maybe the damn gates need to be closed so that people can't get in there in the first place. I am your ever humble host, Rich Girard. Thanks for tuning in. Until next week, be good, be well. Don't do anything we wouldn't do. We're proud to have in the audience. Thanks so much for being there. Come get some pickled peppers. You know where I am. Good night.